Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki, Sharma, Upadhyay. Let's get started. Ever since the war in Ukraine began, there have been fears of it spilling over. And those fears are coming true. Europe is under attack. Russia has intensified its strikes on Europe. This is a gas war we are talking about, which could bleed European economies and make its people suffer. Russia has announced drastic cuts to gas supplies to Europe. What makes things worse is that Europe is not united in its response. European countries can't agree on something as basic as rationing energy. And they have their own reasons for it. But the fallout is going to hurt all of them. Russia's gas cuts will hurt businesses. European economies could plunge into recession. On Gravitas tonight, we'll tell you about Russia's moves, Europe's reactions, and more importantly, Europe's options. The world saw this coming. Why could Europe not insulate itself from this strike? We'll discuss that. Europe is under attack. Russia is waging an economic war. Russian gas supplies to Europe are down by 80%. Russia could single-handedly push Europe into recession. This gas war threatens governments and leaders in the EU, and Europe has virtually no defense. Today, Russia announced more supply cuts. The Europeans saw this coming, but that does not make their situation any better. Earlier this month, Russia shut off the Nord Stream pipeline. They said it was for maintenance. Europe feared the supplies will not resume. They did. But now Russia has struck another blow. It has cut supplies further. In fact, these cuts began last month. Quick primer. Russia supplies gas to Europe through Nord Stream 1. It's a gas pipeline. It is operated by Russia's state-owned company Gazprom. Until yesterday, Nord Stream 1 was operating at just 40% of its capacity. Today, Russia has reduced it by half, meaning this pipeline is now operating at just 20% of its capacities. Let me repeat that. From 100% before the war, it went down to 40%, and now it has fallen to 20%. So Europe has now lost 80% of its supply from Russia. And this is bad news, whichever way you look at it. Russia made up more than 40% of Europe's natural gas needs. That's what Russia supplied. Now it accounts for just 15%. The Nord Stream is Russia's biggest pipeline. Last year, it delivered more than a third of European gas imports, but now the supply from Russia is as good as gone. The question is, why has Moscow taken the step? To build pressure, to strike a blow. Russia says it is not getting the parts it needs for the pipeline to function. And for that, it blames Western sanctions. So the message is clear. If you want Russian gas, lift the sanctions.
Russia is not interested in stopping gas supplies to Europe. Russia is a responsible supplier of gas, and whoever says what, be in the European Commission, European capital cities, United States of America, Russia was, is, and remains a country that in no small way guarantees Europe's energy security, and not just verbally, but de facto. On the other hand, if Europe continues to move along this path of recklessly introducing limitations and sanctions, which hit right back at themselves, then the situation here would be a different one.
That statement/threat from the Kremlin came yesterday. Today, Russia has walked the talk. Who is hurt the most? Germany. They're the ones feeling the biggest impact. Germany still depends on Russia for around a third of its supplies, but now they'll have to do with less Russian gas. Who else is affected? Poland, Bulgaria, Finland, Denmark, the Netherlands, Italy, France, Austria, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. All of these countries have either suffered partial cuts or completely lost Russian gas supply. What will be the economic impact of these cuts? In one word, dire. Leading European economies could be pushed into recession. If Russia completely stops supply, Hungary's economic output will decline by 6.5%. Italy will lose 5.7%. Austria and Germany almost 3% each. And that's why the Russian cuts are worrying. They could plunge Europe into a deep recession. Germany has launched a fierce attack on Russia. It says there is no technical reason for Russia to cut supplies. This is what the German economy minister said.
To draw a line, I think it's an important, very important next step. It shows that Europe stays united, that Europe is able to find unity and giving a strong signal also in the day where the flows of gas in Nord Stream 1 are reduced to another 20% to Putin and to Russia. You won't split us.
You won't split us, he says. So Berlin is banking on European unity, and it doesn't look like a very bright idea, and I'll tell you why. Today, an important meeting took place in Brussels. Energy ministers from European Union states met. They reached a deal to ration gas. Remember, we told you about this proposal. The EU has proposed cuts on gas consumption. All countries will reduce consumption. They proposed what is now called the 15% rule, 15%. That's how much they proposed to cut. European countries were asked to reduce their gas usage by 15%. For now, these cuts will be voluntary. But if push comes to shove, Brussels wanted the power to enforce these cuts. The EU leadership did not get the deal they wanted. Their proposals have been substantially watered down. They've had to exempt a large number of industries. Plus, they've given some countries a backdoor. Under certain circumstances, these countries can be exempted from the 15% rule. So the EU's plan is not really binding. And that's because a number of countries were opposed to rationing. Spain and Portugal, for example, they don't really depend on Russian gas, so they don't want to ration gas and hurt their economies. Then we have Poland. It was opposed to the 15% plan because its storage is almost full. Poland has a good reserve supply. It says the EU's proposal to ration gas is, quote unquote, totally against the idea of energy security and democracy. Greece, Cyprus, Malta and Ireland have also rejected mandatory rationing. Hungary is on a different trajectory altogether. It wants to buy more Russian gas. Recently, the Hungarian foreign minister was in Moscow. He was trying to secure another 1 billion cubic meters of Russian natural gas. So long story short, Europe is divided and Russia is hitting it where it hurts the most. Russia is cutting gas supplies and European nations don't want to cut consumption. Ukraine is calling it a gas war. Listen to what President Volodymyr Zelensky said.
Today we saw new gas threats to Europe. Despite the Nord Stream turbine concession, Russia is not planning to resume gas supply to European countries as it is obliged to do under a contract. This is all done by Russia on purpose to make it as difficult as possible for Europeans to prepare for winter. And this is an open gas war that Russia is waging against a united Europe. This is precisely how it should be perceived.
There's no doubt Russia is waging an economic war on Europe. It is weaponizing gas supplies. But remember, Europe too targeted Russia with sanctions. And this is war. When you attack, you must prepare for a counterattack. So what has Europe done to save itself? Does it have alternatives? Can it get gas from elsewhere? Well, it does have some options. Option number one is the United States. Europe could buy gas from the US, but American supplies are going to be expensive. Transportation is the big challenge. There is no gas pipeline between America and Europe. So the gas needs to be transported in liquid form via ships, and that ends up being more expensive. Option number two is Norway and Azerbaijan. They could supply gas. Europe already has agreements in place, but do Norway and Azerbaijan have enough supply? Experts say they don't. Not immediately, at least. They won't be able to fill the gap left behind by Russia. And that's why Europe is stuck. It needs alternatives to Russian gas. Its options are limited and less than ideal. And it is running out of time. A cold winter and a deep recession are around the corner. So that's Europe under attack from Russia. You see, in our world, war has many manifestations. It is fought on many fronts. Even a military war, apart from the use of force, involves the use of tactics, technology, espionage, honey traps. Basically, any trick you can deploy to hurt the enemy. The Russia-Ukraine war is no different. Their latest skirmish involved a honey trap. Apparently, Ukraine was trying to lure Russian pilots, offering them bribes and European citizenship in return for Russian warplanes. Things were going as per plan until a Russian spy, in the guise of a pilot's girlfriend, spilled the beans. This story is truly stranger than fiction. Here's what happened next.
This story is about a game of cat and mouse. A battle of wits between Russia and Ukraine. It starts with this man, Christo Grozev, a Bulgarian journalist, and the lead Russia investigator at Bellingcat. This is a Netherlands-based investigative group. It recently teamed up with Ukrainian spies to make Russian pilots surrender their planes. The Russian media says Kremlin was aware of this. It's trying to sell this as a counter-intel operation, a double operation game. But apparently it was a serious blunder for the FSB, the Russian Federal Security Agency. Here's what happened. A team of Ukrainian spies got in touch with Russian pilots. They tried to lure them to fly their aircraft into Ukrainian-controlled territories. Up to 10 Russian pilots were contacted to defect. The pilots were asked to fly at low altitude and simulate interception by Ukraine. They had to pretend that the Ukrainians got them. In case of trouble, they were asked to give sedatives to the plane's navigator. What were the pilots getting in return? $2 million and citizenship in one of the EU countries. Why was Ukraine doing this? To embarrass the Kremlin. Also to acquire some Russian warplanes in the process. Like the Sukhoi Su-24M, the Sukhoi Su-34 and Tupolev Tu-22M3. So did the plot work? It did not, thanks to an FSB girlfriend for hire. According to the journalist involved in this operation, an FSB agent was posing as the girlfriend of one of the pilots. Reports say her name was Maria. The Russian pilot apparently asked the Ukrainian side to let her accompany him instead of his wife. It wasn't long before Ukraine figured out the reality. They probed the girlfriend's background to find that she had been to Istanbul a few months ago and Barcelona a year earlier. Throughout this operation, she had been in touch with FSB counter-intel officials. It became clear that the operation to lure Russian pilots had turned into a game of double deceit. Both sides were trying to outsmart each other and extract as much information as possible. So who won in the end? Depends on who you ask. Ukraine says the FSB lost crucial information in this process. Russia says the plot allowed them to identify Ukrainian military sites. Who's speaking the truth? The journalist involved says a soon-to-be-released film on the entire double operation will settle the debate. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now to another conflict, the one over Taiwan. The island claims independence. Beijing says it's a part of China. Enter America. Their House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to visit Taiwan. China does not like the idea, neither does US President Joe Biden, but Pelosi wants to go anyway. So China has issued a threat. It says it is willing to use its army to stop Nancy Pelosi from going to Taiwan.
Recently, China has made it clear to the US on many occasions that it is firmly opposed to Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. We are fully prepared. If the US insists on going its own way, China will certainly take firm and forceful measures. If the US insists on going its own way, China will take strong measures to respond and counteract resolutely.
Taiwan is taking China's vows of retaliation seriously. It has launched military drills. Look at these images. Taiwan's military was in action earlier today. There was a Navy destroyer. It was firing missiles. Taiwanese jets were in the air too. They're firing flares and practicing maneuvers. At the center of all of this is Tsai Ing-wen, the Taiwanese president who oversaw the drills today. And she had this message for Beijing.
To all the brothers and sisters fighting on the waters, excellent drill by everyone just now demonstrated the ability and determination by the soldiers of the Republic of China to defend the country. Let's continue to work hard and guard our homeland together.
Good job. All of this is happening because Nancy Pelosi wants to visit Taiwan. China is threatening forceful measures. The US fears Pelosi's plane could be shot down by the Chinese. That's the assessment from the Pentagon. That's how worried Washington, D.C. is about Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. If China does use force, though, how will Taipei respond? It is preparing to engage militarily. And let me remind you, all of this is happening over a diplomatic visit. It has increased the threat of conflict. What explains this? Why is China so touchy about Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan? Quick history. The last time an American speaker visited Taiwan was 25 years back, Newt Gingrich. He traveled to Taipei in 1997. At that time, the situation was better. But now tensions are high. And that's because China has changed in the last 25 years. It is now an economic power. It has one of the largest militaries in the world, also a leader whose ambition knows no bounds. Today's China is more assertive. It considers Pelosi's visit as a threat to its sovereignty and its standing. And it's prepared to deal with this threat militarily. Look at how China describes it. It says such a visit would undermine China's sovereignty and gravely impact its ties with the US. I have the Chinese Defense Ministry statement with me. This is what it says. The Chinese People's Liberation Army will resolutely thwart any form of interference by external forces and separatist plots of Taiwan independence. Now, this is also a politically sensitive time in China. President Xi Jinping is seeking a third term in office this year. It's a foregone conclusion. His position is quite strong and his control is complete, but his challenges too are mounting. The Chinese economy is staring at a recession. Some banks have failed to return the deposits of their customers. There are mortgage boycotts in China. The last thing that Xi Jinping wants is to appear weak on Taiwan. Hence the tough stand on Nancy Pelosi. Also, a proposed visit could overlap with an important event. Next week, on the 1st of August, the PLA is celebrating its founding anniversary. If Pelosi visits Taiwan at that time, Beijing would be humiliated. So China has mobilized its entire state machinery to stop her. Taiwan is flexing its military muscle. How is the US responding? The Biden administration seems to have developed cold feet. Last week, the US president was asked about Pelosi's visit. He said she should not go.
Do you expect to talk to President Xi soon, sir?
I think I'll be talking to President Xi within the next 10 days.
Mr. President, do you think it's a good idea for Speaker Pelosi to travel to Taiwan this summer?
Well, I think that the military thinks it's not a good idea right now, but I don't know what the status of it is.
That statement did not go down well in Washington, D.C. Biden says he's expecting a call from Xi Jinping this week. It's not clear when they'll talk, but there's no doubt that Team Biden now faces a catch-22 situation. If Biden backtracks, America looks weak. And if Pelosi goes, they risk a conflict with China. Meanwhile, the list of travelers to Taiwan could get longer. Mike Pompeo wants to go there too. Pompeo, remember, served as the Secretary of State under Donald Trump. He says he's ready to travel to Taiwan with Pelosi. I have that statement with me too. He posted it on social media. Nancy, I'll go with you, he says. I'm banned in China, but not freedom-loving Taiwan. See you there. This is Mike Pompeo for you. Nancy Pelosi has not responded to him. In fact, it's not clear if she'll go ahead with the visit and risk igniting a conflict with China. She was asked about it last week. This is what she said.
If the inference to draw on from your comment is that my going there is problematic, I think what the president was saying is maybe the military was afraid our plane would get shot down or something like that by the Chinese. I don't know exactly. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. You're telling me, and I've heard it anecdotally, but I haven't heard it from the president.
So there's a lot of mystery and controversy around this visit. The world is watching America's moves. We'll keep track. For the moment, we head to Afghanistan, and we're talking about the Taliban. They seem to have received an offer to join the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It's a rather serious development which poses grave security concerns for India. We'll discuss that in a bit. First, let's tell you about the development. On Monday, China and Pakistan held a meeting. In attendance were Pakistan's Foreign Secretary Sohail Mahmood and Beijing's man in Kabul, Yo Xiaoyong. He's China's special envoy to Afghanistan. So these two men met and they held a meeting over Afghanistan. This was according to Pakistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It says they discussed humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. They also talked about matters of mutual interest like extending regional connectivity. I have the joint statement, and this is what it says. I'm quoting. In the context of regional connectivity, both sides exchanged views on the extension of CPEC to Afghanistan to promote economic development and prosperity. Economic development and prosperity. That's what they say the aim is. But whose prosperity? It doesn't take a genius to answer that. China wants to fill the void in Afghanistan, the power vacuum created by America's withdrawal. And Pakistan wants to undermine India's interests. It wants to weaken Indian influence in Afghanistan, and none of this is a secret. Afghanistan's gains, if any, will be by default in this. Nonetheless, the Taliban is keen to pursue this. In August 2021, you might remember, when they just conquered Kabul, this is what Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid had said, and I'm quoting again, "The CPEC is a useful project and we look forward to implementing Afghanistan's part of the project." So they're keen to be on board. 1 year on, they're close to achieving this. Pakistan and China want to extend the CPEC to Afghanistan. How exactly will they do that? Reports say China will build a motorway. It will link Peshawar with Kabul. This will be the foundation of Afghanistan's entry into the CPEC. Subsequently, other such motorway projects could be launched. And by the way, this project or proposal is not new. It has been discussed several times. Once in 2018, then again in 2019. On both occasions, China proposed traversing the Durand Line and making Afghanistan a part of CPEC. But Afghanistan was a democracy back then. So the government in Kabul rejected China's proposal. It feared such a motorway to Pakistan would only help terror groups like the Taliban. That was 3 years back. Now, Afghanistan is a terror regime itself. The Taliban are calling the shots and China and Pakistan want to make the most of it. India, on the other hand, has reason to worry. Afghanistan's entry into CPEC could spell trouble for India on several fronts. First of all, it weakens India's position as an economic and strategic partner of Afghanistan. Despite the Taliban coming to power, India has maintained this role for security reasons. It remains one of the biggest regional donors to Afghanistan. With the extension of CPEC, China could overshadow India's role. It could disrupt India's economic and trade activities in Afghanistan. Second, given India's limited strategic depth in Afghanistan, the extension of CPEC will give Pakistan the upper hand, a smoother passage for the flow of arms and terrorists, not to mention a better chance of using them against India. And with these security threats in mind, the Ministry of External Affairs in India has issued a statement. This is what it says. Any such action by any party directly infringes on India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. India firmly and consistently opposes projects in the so-called CPEC, which are in Indian territory, that has been illegally occupied by Pakistan. Such activities are inherently illegal, illegitimate and unacceptable and will be treated accordingly by India. So India has registered its objection. But the Afghanistan challenge is only set to rise for New Delhi. And here's another challenge that India faces: the military junta in Myanmar. First, it was jailing its critics. Now it is executing them. This Saturday, at least 4 political prisoners were hanged to death in Myanmar. The executions have triggered a lot of criticism and protest from ASEAN countries to America to the United Nations. They're all condemning what has happened in Myanmar, asking the world to boycott the junta completely. How does all of this put India in a tough spot? Our next report explains.
These images are from Yangon, a city constantly on the boil. For the last 1 year, Yangon has been in the grip of pro-democracy protests. Demonstrations against the rule of the military junta. This week, the protests grew bigger. The reason is this: last Saturday, the junta executed 4 of its critics. It hanged them to death for their activism. This includes Phyo Zayatho, a 41-year-old former lawmaker in Aung San Suu Kyi's government. Kya Min Yu, a 53-year-old prominent veteran pro-democracy activist, and La Myo Aung and Aung Thura Zaw, 2 protesters accused of killing a junta informer. Their deaths mark the first executions in Myanmar since 1988. They've been met with a wave of condemnation globally. Malaysia has called them a mockery of the ASEAN peace plan.
It takes place about less than 2 weeks after the special envoy visited Naypyidaw, and just about a week before the ASEAN foreign ministers meeting in Phnom Penh. So we look at it that as if the junta is making a mockery of the 5-point consensus.
America has asked countries to stop doing business with the junta.
We underscore that with the escalating violence, with these horrific atrocities that the junta has carried out, there can be no business as usual with this regime.
And the United Nations says it's worried about what would follow.
I am afraid that even more floodgates are now opening, and that there is even going to be less restraint on the part of the junta to continue its attacks on the people of Myanmar and to try to instill fear, even more fear in the population.
There are demonstrations against the executions from Bangkok to Tokyo. Hundreds have hit the streets in protest. But back in Myanmar, the junta remains firm on its stance. It says the killings were lawful, not personal.
These criminals were given the chance to defend themselves. The verdict of the trial were based on eyewitnesses and facts.
Such statements will not only isolate the junta further, they will also pose a dilemma for nations engaging with it. Most countries in South Asia have been talking to the junta. They're trying to persuade the generals to transition to democracy. India is one of them. Given its security concerns in Northeast and China's growing footprint in Myanmar, India chose to engage with the junta. It pushed for a return to democracy. But the way things are going in Myanmar, India, along with other ASEAN countries, could soon face pressure to take a harder line.
Let's shift our attention to the global economy. The world is worried about a recession. There is no doubt that a downturn is coming. Leading economies are predicting a slowdown. What about India? Does India face a recession too? How is the Indian economy poised? Tonight I have some estimates for you. Bloomberg recently conducted a survey of economists. They were asked a simple question: what is the probability of recession? In the United States, the probability is around 40%. In Europe, it's between 50 to 55%. Where does India stand? What is the probability of a recession in India? 0%. That's what economists say. There is a 0% chance of a recession in India. The Indian economy could dodge a recession. That's also the assessment of India's central bank, the RBI, the Reserve Bank of India. The RBI issues a monthly bulletin. It gives an assessment of the economy. The bulletin for July makes some interesting points. It says two things are working in India's favour. Number one, agricultural activity. It remains strong. And number two, manufacturing and services sectors. They are showing some momentum. Here's how the RBI assesses this. And I'm quoting. There are sparks in the wind that ignite the innate strength of the economy and set it on course to becoming the fastest growing economy in the world. There's one more thing that's helping India, and that's Russian supplies, especially the oil purchases. In April, Russia was the fourth largest crude supplier to India. Since then, India has ramped up imports of Russian crude. According to one estimate, they've climbed by 50 times. 50 times since April. How much oil has India bought from Russia? We don't have any official numbers, but there are some estimates. Since March, India has bought more than 66 million barrels of Russian oil. And it is not just oil. Indian imports of other Russian goods have also gone up. What does India import from Russia? Coal, soybean, sunflower oil, fertilizers. And the reason for this is obvious. Russian supplies are cheap. And that has helped the Indian economy. Let's come back to the example of oil. Russian oil was $36 cheaper than the international prices. Do you know how much India saved by buying Russian oil? At least $27.5 million every day. Cheaper Russian supplies have helped India contain inflation to an extent. And let me be clear, I'm not saying that inflation has come under control in India. There are still worrying shortages of essential goods, and that's still hurting people. Prices are still high. But if the RBI is to be believed, the worst could be behind us. Governor Shaktikanta Das says inflation could cool starting October. Asia, in fact, is doing much better than the rest of the world, and that could help India further. The International Monetary Fund has shared some numbers today. There's a projection for Asia. The region will continue to grow, but at 4.6%. That's the growth rate the IMF is projecting. What about India? The IMF predicts strong performance by the Indian economy. It projects a 7.4% growth rate for India. That's the highest for any major economy, 7.4%. And all of this is good news, but we do live in unpredictable times. Global events can easily upend India's recovery. Safe to say, though, that India has reason to be cautiously optimistic about its future. Our next story begins in the year 1999. The Pakistani army had intruded into Indian territory. It had crossed the line of control and captured key mountain peaks in Kargil. The task before India was to reclaim its land. On the 9th of May, Pakistani army began heavy shelling. The Indian army responded. Kargil became a battlefront. The Indian Air Force began a limited strike. India and Pakistan fought through the months of June and July. This was the first time the two countries had come face to face since becoming nuclear powers. It was also the last time India and Pakistan engaged in a full-blown war. The Kargil War ended with India reclaiming the strategic heights. The date was 26th of July 1999. It's been a whole generation. Today is the 26th of July again, and India is celebrating the 23rd Kargil Vijay Diwas. Vijay means victory. And this day, the Kargil Vijay Diwas, is about remembering those who made this victory possible. The brave men and women of the Indian Armed Forces. 674 of them died during the war. 23 years on, most of us are yet to comprehend what it really takes to die for your country. What it takes to sacrifice oneself so that others may live. What it takes to put the country above our loved ones, to leave one's family behind to answer the call of duty, or to willingly march to the battlefield knowing very well that you have a young child waiting at home whom you may never see again. Major Padmapani Acharya was a company commander. His task was to recapture a position in Tololing. Major Acharya completed his mission, but he succumbed to his injuries. Back home, his wife was pregnant. In his last letter, Major Acharya told his father to read stories from the Mahabharata to his wife. Let me quote from it. "Combat is an honor of a lifetime." That's what he wrote. "And I would not think of anything less. What better way to serve the nation? Tell a story a day of the Mahabharata to Charu so that your grandchild imbibes good values. Major Acharya's daughter was born 3 months after his death. She is now 23 years old. This is Captain Saurabh Kalia. He, along with 5 other soldiers, were captured by the Pakistan army. Even before a full-fledged war began, they were tortured, their bones were broken, their nose and lips were chopped off, their eardrums were pierced, their eyes were punctured. What does it take to endure such pain for the sake of one's country? This is something most of us may never know. While most of us have jobs, and we are committed to our jobs, it takes more than just commitment to be a soldier, to join the army knowing fully well that you may die on the job. When Major Vivek Gupta told his father about his intention to join the armed forces, he reportedly said, and I'm quoting, "I'm born to be an infantryman." His father, a soldier himself, understood this call well. On the 8th of June 1999, Senior Gupta received a letter from his son. "Don't worry, Dad, I will be back soon. You should feel proud of me. I'm contributing something for the nation in this uniform I have worn." Major Gupta and his men were tasked with capturing a point in the Dras sector. They managed to neutralize several enemy troops. But Major Gupta was hit by bullets and he succumbed to his injuries. His father was proud. "While my 27-year-old son proved his blood, his fellow soldiers lived on to win more peaks," he said. I can't imagine the courage of a father saying words like these. They say soldiers don't die in the battlefield. They die the day their country forget their sacrifice. Today, India remembers these heroes. It salutes them and their supreme sacrifice. It salutes their families, their sons and daughters, those who've had to grow up without a parent. Some of these children have gone on to become soldiers themselves. 23 years since Kargil, the threat from Pakistan still persists. But India is more than determined, and more determined than ever, to not let the sacrifice of the Kargil heroes go in vain. We salute them. And we'd like to end the show on a lighter note. You may have come across videos of a viral prank, a viral pink sauce. It's the new Dalgona coffee. Pink sauce is all over the internet. The woman who came up with this sauce is now selling it for $20 a bottle. But here's the thing. No one knows what this sauce is made of. And those who bought it say there's something amiss. Is the viral pink sauce even safe? Well, that too, no one knows.
So the pink sauce is made of sunflower seed oil, dragon fruit, honey, chili, and garlic. By the way, this is so freaking cute.
Have you heard of pink sauce? Ask any Indian this question and she will tell you that pink sauce is what you get when you mix red sauce and white sauce.
Ingredients for anybody wondering.
That's how some of us like to eat our pasta in this part of the world. But in another, where TikTok is still legal, pink sauce has found a whole new meaning.
When you got your mama filming for you.
This is Chef P. What you see on that piece of chicken is a pink sauce that she claims to have created. Chef P is from Miami. She has been promoting her pink sauce on TikTok. She says it goes with everything: fried chicken, French fries, or tacos. She is selling this sauce for $20 a bottle. Pretty steep. How does it taste? Let's ask someone who ordered it.
It smells like ranch, and the taste of it is definitely a little different than ranch. If you're not a ranch person, you're not going to like this sauce.
Some say it tastes like Jalusil. You know, the digestive medicine? The problem with this pink sauce is not its taste, but what goes into it. because no one really knows. For the longest time, Chef P too wouldn't tell. Then she came out with the recipe: sunflower seed oil, honey, milk, distilled vinegar and dragon fruit. When people put these ingredients together at home, they did not get a pink sauce. So what really goes into this bottle? The ones who bought the sauce from Chef P say a lot of things don't add up. The nutrition chart, for example. It reads 444 servings in the bottle at 90 calories each, which makes it 40,000 calories in the bottle. The spelling of vinegar is wrong too, and the bottle says the product contains milk, something Chef P never disclosed. People are also complaining about leaky packaging.
Oh my gosh. Look how freaking cute this is. So the pink sauce is made of sunflower seed oil, dragon fruit, honey, chili, and garlic. By the way, this is so freaking cute.
There is no clarity whether this viral sauce is safe, whether it's even approved by regulators. But on its website, pink sauce is sold out. People are buying it left, right, and center.
And it wasn't bad. So if you like ranch, I would definitely recommend it.
The thing with social media platforms like TikTok is you never know whether to trust or not trust what you see there. It's hard to tell fact from fiction. Or pink sauce from prank sauce. Today, big junk food brands too are using TikTok challenges to lure young customers. In the US, for example, the viral TikTok challenge involves learning a dance, performing it at Burger King, and sharing it online. Those who complete this challenge get a $1 burger. In Australia, McDonald's paid TikTokers to recreate its jingle. What does this tell you? Before you jump into a viral trend or purchase a viral product, do keep in mind that behind a challenge or a recipe may be a big brand or a small business waiting to say, gotcha. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, it better be, cause I ain't coming in. And if you're coming in, I'll get your ass pinned.
And now let's take a look at what else is making news across the world. It's time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
The unprecedented economic crisis in Sri Lanka deals a severe blow to the healthcare system in the country as shortages leave bankrupt hospitals empty. Troops were deployed and residents of Papua New Guinea's capital were told to stay home after a brutal election-related attack hospitalized 2 people. A machete-wielding gang chased down 2 victims outside a counting center in Port Moresby. Zimbabwe debuts gold coins as legal tender to stem the inflation, which can now be used to make purchases. Thousands of Venezuelan migrants stranded in southern Mexico for months set off on a northbound caravan in hopes of reaching the U.S. border. Waving Venezuelan flags and walking under the sun, they departed from the city of Huehuetan, southern Mexico. Hundreds of supporters of a new Tunisian constitution, which will expand presidential powers, took to the streets to celebrate as referendum polls came to a close. Soon after polls closed, an exit poll was published by Sigma Council, indicating a yes vote of 92.3%. Thousands of Brazilian women took to the streets of Sao Paulo to protest against right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro's administration. The demonstration was carried out to mark the International Day of Afro-Latin American, Afro-Caribbean and Diaspora Women. A magnitude 5.5 earthquake damaged buildings, including a local church in northern Ecuador's San Gabriel city. 8 people have been injured so far. Authorities scrambled to put out a fire in a protected national park in northern Greece, which has been burning through hectares of forest for days. The Dadia Forest National Park is home to a variety of flora and fauna, including the protected black vulture. Olympic champion and defending Commonwealth men's javelin gold medalist Neeraj Chopra has pulled out of the Birmingham Commonwealth Games. Chopra picked up a groin injury during the final of the men's javelin at the World Athletics Championship on Saturday. Outgoing chief of hospitality giant Whitebread, Alison Brittain is set to become Premier League's first woman chairperson. The 57-year-old was appointed after clubs voted unanimously in favor of her appointment. She will take over from interim chair Peter McCormick early next year.
With that, it's a wrap. We're leaving you with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.
Right now.
Follow